Welcome to the Beneski Museum of Natural History at Amherst College. We're about to take a tour with Dr. Stan Rachootin of Mount Holyoke College. Stan began working at Mount Holyoke in 1984 and over decades has taught numerous classes on Darwin's work. Today he's going to take us on a tour of some of the key elements of the Beneski collection.
So here are a series of extinct birds on this side. And we can start with this one, the passenger pigeon. Now, if you're reading in the middle of the 19th century about anything about nature, and lots of people talk about passenger pigeons. Darwin writes about them, Wallace writes about them. The thing that's important about passenger pigeons in the 19th century, they are by far the commonest bird in the world. And today, they are one of the extinctest birds in the world. There are no living passenger pigeons, although people are making arguments, do we have enough of their DNA kicking around in dried up specimens that we might be able to get one, get some made up again. Maybe, maybe not. I think this is going to be it's going to probably be harder to do this one than to do mammoths, because mammoths, we have a lot of DNA, and Indian elephants are really close to mammoths. But this one, incredibly large flocks of passenger pigeons. It was said that they would blot out the sun when they would fly over you, and you hope you have an umbrella at the same time too. What were passenger pigeons doing that they could have so many such huge flocks of passenger pigeons? What do passenger pigeons eat? Well, they are strong flyers. They are flying all over the place.
Eating
No.
other birds?
No, it would be very difficult to have a flock of 1 billion birds that are going out. Okay, I see a sparrow. Let's go, guys! And then the 1 billion birds dive down on the sparrow. Or even an ostrich at that point. You're not going to get very far with that. No, their specialty was acorns. And acorns do something called mast, which is spelled M-A-S-T for those of you taking down notes, which you shouldn't be doing because this won't be on the test probably. Okay, so mast fruiting is when oak trees decide and tell each other, and they've not let us in on their code, we're all going to make a vast number of acorns just this season. And so I've been here long enough in my 120 years at Mount Holyoke. Well, in the last 35 years at Mount Holyoke, there have been about 3 or 4 years where you walk around Upper Lake and it feels like you're out in World War I, and they're shooting machine guns at you from all directions because there's so many acorns falling all over the place. And then you walk around in a normal year around Upper Lake and ping, 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 ping. You hear the acorns falling, but it's not hundreds of acorns falling every 10 seconds. So the massed fruiting does what? Why would the oak trees be into massed fruiting? Does anybody eat acorns? Squirrels, chipmunks, deer mice, deer, all the things that carry Lyme disease. Deer mice and deer. So a big year for acorns, that's going to be followed by a big year for deer mice and a big year for Lyme disease. So it really gets under your skin in some way or other. But the and lots of weevils are also putting drilling holes and putting their eggs into green acorns as well. All these things are eating up basically almost all the acorns that are produced every year. Very few of them get to germinate. But in a year that no predator of acorns can predict, there are vast numbers of extra acorns. There aren't enough weevils or deer mice or deer or chipmunks to do much damage to them. That's the year the acorns will be able to germinate because there's so many extras. Okay, and They know, all the oak trees get the message that we're going to do it together that same year, but nobody else has gotten in on the message, and so nobody knows, oh, this is the year I should have 20 extra babies, because we're going to get to September and there's a vast amount of food for getting us through the winter. So a lot of the acorns just survive. The trick of the passenger pigeons was, we are willing to fly anywhere in North America, and it's all oak forest everywhere, to find the forest that is doing mass fruiting, and then I will settle down with 40 million of my closest friends, and we're going to eat all the acorns. And so we're going to start in Missouri, and then if the next one is in Wisconsin, we'll fly to Wisconsin, and then, okay, guys, everybody up to Manitoba. And you follow the season, you follow the acorns, and everybody gets lots of acorns because you're willing to go where the mass fruiting is. You're strong flyers, and you'll find. And if you have that many of you out flying, you're going to find the forests which are doing that. So where have we seen a story like that in this class? Periodical cicadas. The 17-year cicadas, mass numbers of them. The predators can't do anything with them. There's so many of them, and so they have the trees and the forest to themselves. And then, 17 years later, there's nobody around who remembers, oh, I remember. No grandparent is telling the kids about the year of the magic cicadas magic cicada actually, who came out and provided vast amounts of food for 3 weeks. You just can't remember that because nobody lasts more than, nobody in the forest around here lasts more than a couple of years. So that was their trick, and then we came along and cut down all the oak trees and put in corn and wheat, and so the passenger pigeons who have 1 egg per mating, every time they mate, and will only feel comfortable mating if surrounded by several thousand of their closest friends doing the same thing. So you put 14 of them in a single cage in the Cincinnati Zoo. They look at each other and say, okay, we all take vows of chastity, and then they die one after another. And that was the end of them in the early 20th century. Okay. Okay, this bird here is a moa, and it comes from New Zealand. And who are the native peoples of the first people to get to New Zealand? What?
Right, was there.
What? Who are the native inhabitants of...
Aborigines.
No.
Is that Australia?
That's Australia. New Zealand's a different hunk. Bye.
Is it the Maori?
Maori. And what does Maori mean in Maori? Moa hunter. They were delicious. This is a medium-sized moa. They would get to be the biggest species was about 12 feet tall. They were the tallest flightless birds of all time, but they're completely extinct, and they, let's see, what else do we need to say about them? And they were killed off by people. The last one probably lived about 500 or 600 years ago. Oftentimes their remains are found. You'll find the neck and head and the feet, because those parts were not put into a stew pot, and the rest of the bird was basically stewed. There were no big herbivorous mammals at all in New Zealand. They weren't able to get there. These were able to get there. They probably walked at one time when New Zealand was connected either to Antarctica or to Australia. And they took then the role of the mammals. And the plants evolved tricks against them. There are lots of families of plants that are not closely related to each other, which sort of grow like barbed wire along the ground, probably trying to convince moas, you're going to get stuck in this, you're going to hurt your feet, why don't you eat the berries over there instead? And so the plants are still growing this way, but there are no moas eating their berries anymore. It would be nice to say, I used to say when I started this, that the kiwi is sort of a dwarf moa. Because if you've ever seen, if you look at the tarsometatarsus of a kiwi, this bone here, it's about the same length as that bone in a chicken, but it's absolutely massive. It looks like, this was made out of a moa by attempting to miniaturize it. And then the other thing is, if you've ever seen a Xerox of a kiwi egg before it's laid its egg, the bird is this long and the egg is this long, and it looks like a terrifying thing to lay. So again, maybe this was a miniaturized moa of some sort and it didn't quite get the egg thing right, but no, the DNA evidence now shows pretty clearly its ancestors could fly, even though it's a ratite, which are today all flightless, and it flew in from New Caledonia and landed among the moas, and then it became wingless. And it started acting like a mammal, because it has feathers that are basically like hair. It is nocturnal. It hunts by smell. It's doing one mammal thing after another, except it's a bird. Here, the giant auk. The giant auk is sort of like a giant flightless puffin, and lived all around the northern hemisphere, around a lot of the northern hemisphere. But sealers found that it was people who hunted seals found that these were easier to hunt than seals. Bash them over the head. They're almost, vast amounts of fat. You could render them very quickly and use the fat for all sorts of things and sell it. And so their populations crashed a lot. Then, as they were getting very, very rare at the beginning of the 19th century, there was in terms of people's fascination with natural history, a whole bunch of people all over Europe wanted to collect the eggs of every single European bird, and this was the rarest European bird. And so eggers would go out to find giant auk eggs and sell them for a vast amount of money, and that put a lot of pressure on them. And then, in fact, there's a whole monograph, portraits of all the remaining great auk eggs. They're eggs about this big, and they have some dark brown mottling on them. And you wouldn't necessarily want a beautiful hand-colored book of pictures of each egg, but that book exists by Alfred Newton of Cambridge University.
Was that during the Victorian era?
Yes, of course. And before they got it, and then finally, the last little colony of them was on an island off the coast of Iceland, and it erupted and steamed them all to death. And that was the end of the great auk. There was one great auk that was a pet of the king of Denmark, and he made a little sort of pearl leash for it, and he walked around with his auk on a leash. And a portrait was painted of it, and then other people, as the great auk got rarer and rarer, would use that portrait and copy it. So many of the portraits of the wild great auk have a white ring around its neck, which was actually a necklace that was put around the pet auk's neck. So, okay, weird auk facts. Okay,